Alright, hey guys, today we are covering Standard SS 8H11, again, still working on that one. Evaluate the role of Georgia in the modern civil rights movement. Clarifying modern because, remember we talked about in the New South era, that was the original civil rights movement that started with Du Bois and Washington and all that. So when they clarify and say modern civil rights era, that means this time period, 1940s through the 1960s. Your learning targets. By the end of class, you should be able to describe the role of the group SCLC and the Albany movement in the civil rights movement, how they play a part in the greater civil rights movement. Last week we talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and his focus on peaceful protest and how that was the way to be successful and make progress in the civil rights movement. John Lewis believed the same. He worked with King closely in the civil rights movement. He spoke at the March on Washington, which you'll learn about tomorrow, and he in general played a large role and still continues to serve our country today in the U.S. House of Representatives. So, first part of your learning target, the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This was created to help with the Montgomery bus boycott over in Montgomery, Alabama. They had had some success with boycotts, and they wanted to keep that going, and they wanted an organization that would focus on that and be able to create things like rallies, marches, and boycotts to help end segregation, to get their point across. It was led by Martin Luther King Jr., and as the SCLC grew and gained more followers and more support, what started in Montgomery, Alabama, they eventually moved the headquarters to here in Atlanta, Georgia, which is why you guys need to know about it. It's an important thing, and they did a lot to help advance the civil rights movement. And the event you are responsible for knowing is the Albany movement. It occurred in 1961. This was a civil rights movement to challenge segregation. Here in Albany, Georgia, a SNCC and other civil rights group gathered to protest peacefully. They carried their signs, they marched, they protested. However, over 1,000 people were arrested for this, one of them being Martin Luther King Jr. Okay? The media followed this. They showed on the nightly news how southern cities were treating African Americans. So this Albany movement, though it didn't lead to immediate desegregation, and Martin Luther King Jr. actually didn't consider it a success in itself, but he took lessons that he learned from it, from what didn't work and what didn't seem successful, and he used them in future endeavors, future boycotts, protests. But the people of Albany, especially the African American and black people, did consider it a success. Maybe not an immediate success, but within a few years, an African American black man was elected county commissioner, and the segregation statutes were actually taken out of their law books there. So even though it didn't seem like some big, huge success at the time, it was one of those little things that kind of chipped away at the segregation policies that existed in Georgia. So not a huge success in Martin Luther King Jr.'s eyes. However, for the people of Albany, it was a success. Okay?